Honey, I understand you did okay at the race today.
Yeah, I think I did okay. I felt pretty good.
You took second in your age group.
Well, it is an old lady age group.
What was your time?
4:45. Yeah.
You finished about 15 minutes better than your most optimistic projection.
That is true.
So congratulations.
Hey, thank you.
It was awesome to see you on the podium.
Thank you.
What was the first thing you asked for when we got back to our Airbnb?
I said, Fatty, please go make me a Floyd's of Leadville recovery drink. I would like chocolate whipped up in the magic bullet.
And of course, being an obedient husband, I went and did this. We're not making this up, by the way.
No, we're not.
You've been using Floyd's of Leadville stuff in all of your training, as well as, of course, in your racing.
I have.
So what do you like? What do you use?
I am a firm believer in this stuff. I use at night the 50 milligram full spectrum CBD capsule or
Capsules, right?
Capsules.
Yeah, pills.
I really like those. At first, when I started training, I was pretty stressed and sleep just didn't want to come. And I've just been taking those, and I feel like I sleep like a baby. I really, really like them. Helps me because I think sleep is super important for me because I'm always on the go and I need my 7 hours of sleep. So I really like that. And then the recovery drink, I love it. I've never taken a recovery drink in my years of training, and I decided to start it. And I can get up the next day after doing 25 miles, and I can ride my bike for 50. I am super impressed with how fast I'm recovering. And I couldn't do that before. So what is the secret ingredient? That would be CBD.
Yeah. And you've been using the balms too.
Oh,
right?
Yes. If I have an ache or a pain, I take out my trusty roller, which is kind of like torture. I rub my balm or my ointment onto whatever is ailing me.
Don't say ointment.
I know. That's why I said it. I rub that into like a calf or a quad or a hamstring. Oh, man. And it feels so good and tingly. And then I roll it out. And I don't have any aches and pains, not even now after I just finished running that marathon. So pretty impressed.
Again, congratulations, hon.
Thank you, honey.
You killed it.
Thank you, Floyd.
Yep, thanks indeed to Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor. Check them out at floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on your first 2 orders.
And thanks, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. This is episode 15 out of season 2. Yes, our second season of this fine show. We, of course, break it down, build it up, get you ready, freak you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country.
And we are proud to say that at least half of this show, that's my half, is being hosted from the host city of Leadville 100. I am in Leadville in my glorious Airbnb, sitting on a floor, tucked away in a closet. I came here for a little Leadville recon, specifically the changes to the Powerline. But more importantly, as you've already heard, I've been here supporting the woman I lovingly call the Hammer. That's right, my wife Lisa knocked out the first leg of the Lead Woman, the Trail Marathon. She finished in second place for her age group hottie. And now she sits in fourth for the women's division of the Lead Woman. Count on more updates from a very proud husband on a very frequent basis.
Yep, this is going to be an ongoing thing through the summer with the Lead Woman for Lisa. We're all pulling for you, Lisa. Good job with that marathon. We were following you here back in L.A. as well. All your fans pulling for you, all the Leadville crew here that listen to this show. So we're pulling for Lisa this summer as she heads into the Lead Woman. Lisa and the other Leadville runners, in fact, have inspired this show to do something other than ride bikes, Fatty.
What?
Yeah, one of us will be doing one of the remaining runs in the Lead Man, Lead Woman series. That one of us is me.
Yeah.
And that run will be, of course, the easiest one on the schedule, the 10K, the day after the Mountain Bike 100. We're calling this the 10K at 10K. And we're throwing a bit of a challenge to our listeners to join us the day after the mountain bike ride for that run. It starts after the mountain bike awards ceremonies, so you have time to collect your buckle and change into your running shoes. There are plenty of spots available. No lottery, no qualifying necessary. Just sign up and line up.
Hottie and the Hammer crushing the 10K at 10K. I love it. Meanwhile, I will bring maximum cowbell. I promise you that. And I will cheer you on as I personally enjoy some extra Floyd's of Leadville recovery product.
Yeah, so as we like to say on the show, we'll see you at the start line. That includes now the 10K start line.
Ooh, multiple start lines. A few shows ago, we had a terrific interview with the head of mountain bikes at Shimano. It was a great breakdown on 1x versus 2x and how to mix and match Shimano's XTR 12-speed Grupo to match your needs.
Well, good news, folks. Shimano has now taken that 12-speed tech and tricked it down to XT and the SLX lines. Like XTR, XT and SLX will do 1x or 2x with the choice between two cassettes, the 1051 or 1045. The 1051 is 1x only. The 2x cranks come in 3626, and the shifter that controls this thing is rapid fire, single lever, one full push to go big ring, and a quick click to go small. There's more to these groups, so check out their website for full details.
Yeah, and by all indications, if you want one of these new Grupos, you could have it in time for the showdown in August. Shimano says shipping starts in mid-June. That's now. Today is Sunday, June 16th as we record. If my Shimano XTR setup is any indication at all, our listeners are going to want to look good and hard at these drivetrains. I tell you, Hottie, having ridden with the 12-speed XTR drivetrain for just over a week now, I could not be more impressed. It has incredibly light action. It's super easy to do multiple shifts up and down the cassette. It has fast, easy shifts, even under load, like up the Powerline, and that incredibly precise feel that Shimano is so well known for.
For a look at the new XT and SLX groups, go to bike.shimano.com. We will also have a link in the show notes for this episode at leadville100podcast.com.
Hottie, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of us saw a photo go crazy on Facebook and other social media. A picture of that first pitch up the famously difficult Powerline climb. But in this photo, there was something different.
Yep, the difference was startling to anyone who's ever gone up or down the Powerline, which is notorious for its deep ruts crisscrossing this incredibly steep road. Until now, you've really had to look ahead and make sure the line you're in doesn't lead you off trail or into an unrideable rut.
Yeah, and now it's been graded, which makes sense to anyone who thinks about the fact that the Powerline Road is in fact a road to allow service vehicles to get close to the power line, which reminds you of its presence with its constant electric hum.
Yeah, grading this thing almost sounds like blasphemy for an LT100 racer. But the question here is, does this grading of the Powerline degrade the race experience? A lot of folks on Facebook seem to think so, that it dumbs down the ride experience.
Yeah, and I get the large point that they're making. Leadville is famous for being tough, right? And for one thing, and for another thing, if you make any change to an iconic course, you can't help but worry that you're losing something. But this isn't, of course, the first change that the Leadville race has had. And not all changes are bad, and some, like this one, can't even be prevented. All that to one side, though, I just wanted to see for myself and make my own mind up. So, earlier today, I strapped a mic to my chest and rode up the Powerline, talking, and of course, speed breathing a lot of the way up. This is Fatty, and I am heading up Powerline. I'm right at the hairpin where things always start getting really difficult. You know, you've got a very hard half mile ahead of you. On race day, I feel very lucky if I can get halfway up it. Today,
Well, I think I'm going to get up it. Talking is going to make it harder. There's never been as clean of a line but it's no less steep. And I can see as it curves away the power line over me as I shift into my granny gear with fresh legs. A 32:51 still leaves me at the very edge. My initial thoughts, is this easier? I think on race day, it's going to be easier in two ways. It's now wide enough and smooth enough that you won't have to change lines with the rut. You can get on the right side and stay on it until you have to pass someone. And then you can go to the left side without any surge of dipping into and out of a rut. And because it is easily 2 or 3 riders wide, the problem of the Congo line is going to disappear. Walkers will be able to walk. Riders won't have to dismount when they come upon a walker. Okay, I've made it past the first S curve. And now you are looking straight on to what may look like a flat, but it's not. That is the falsest of false flats. I'm in my granny, and with the legs fresh, pretty confident I could just keep spinning it. However, that was true when there were ruts and the line was trickier. I give myself, and I'm a sub-9 racer, a 10% chance of not having to get off my bike and walk this just like I have every year on race day. Stopping and taking a picture, I could keep going. Oh, sure. I could keep going. I can see my wife up at almost at that false flat. She's cleaned it. So that tells you something. Tells you she's stronger than me. I'm gonna be quiet for just a second so you can hear for sure one thing that I think is unique to the whole Leadville race, and maybe something that is unique just to the power line. For the Leadville race, it's the sound of the dirt. This sandy, gravelly sound. I don't think there's anything like it in any other ride I've ever done. Let's listen. The other thing is the power line sound. that sizzle. If it's raining on race day, you'll hear it. Made it to the first falls flat. Here's where you can be sure there'll be spectators. Maybe someone helping you. Get on your bike, hold it steady while you clip in, because you're so smoked that it's hard to do that by yourself. Maybe there's someone with a Dixie cup full of Coke, and it's the best thing in the world. And I can see downhill coming my way. And after that, more climbing. Something I've never noticed before. My GPS, and at this point, I've gone down the dip after the first falls flat, and I'm climbing again. Altitude is right at 10,000 feet, which is the same altitude you're at it in town. You're up high as you're doing this second climb of Powerline, but you're nowhere near as high as you're going to be. Right now, middle of June, just went through the deepest water crossing I've ever seen at Powerline. There's a lot. I would say if I had to walk it, which I did not, it's very rideable, but it would have gone up past my ankles and started to touch my shins. Once you are past the first big Powerline climb and you hit the falls flat and the little dip that takes you to the second pitch, everything is back to normal. This is not graded. It is not different. It is in the trees. You got to be careful of your line. And if you ride it, it's because you picked the right line, you picked the right gear, and you got the right stuff in your tank. It is back to business as usual. And the folks who say this is now just a glorified gravel grinder are going to be surprised. I still think an adventure bike might be a great idea someday, maybe even today. But that one smoother mile on the first climb of Powerline is not what's going to tip the scales. I have one last thing I want to say. I always hate this part of the race, and that is not fair to this course. With fresh legs, riding up the Powerline, good Lord, this is beautiful. And it is challenging, but with a good low gear, it is rideable and interesting and fun, and the smell. Oh, I wish I could bring that to the podcast. The smell of the Powerline and St. Kevin's and the lower part of Columbine. You are in these pines and the scent is clean and green and perfect. It's the Leadville smell. And I think it's my favorite smell in the world.
All right, Fatty, I got a few questions here. The first one is, do you always talk nonstop when riding?
More than you probably think. I've had people drop back or attack on rides just to get away from the sort of stream of consciousness that you just heard me do.
Okay, I could see that. Of course, you were talking about the climb, but I'm assuming you had to ride down the Powerline too?
Yeah. And the graded section is actually a much larger red flag as far as I'm concerned on the downhill than on the climb. You can really get going on this straight, steep downhill. You're descending at a 17 to 23% grade for about a half mile. It is a downhill 17 to 23% drag strip. The old ruts acted as speed bumps here and kind of kept folks in check. I'm honestly very worried now that aggressive riders will hit dangerous speeds and hurt themselves or others. And so personally, I hope course marshals are going to be out there in force keeping things in check. There's a second thing about this wide open downhill drag strip. As you get toward the bottom, it veers right, if you remember. And that right is, I didn't have a leveler with me, but I would say it is either unbanked or maybe slightly off camber. So it's easy to bring a lot of heat into it, and it could be very tough to keep your bike upright when you hit this unbanked right turn. I don't think a fall here would end your race, but it could definitely give you a serious raspberry as a race souvenir.
Yeah, or send you flying off the side of that right turn, because if you go straight through that right turn, that's a long fall. And of course, it's not over after that. You've got that hairpin left turn at the bottom of Powerline, correct?
Yep, that's right. And the grading work on that hairpin has done something very interesting. It has made it awesome. There is a high banking on the outside of that hairpin now, and you can just ride up it and rail it with whatever speed you've kept after that off-camber ride. Mm-hmm. So it's really fun now.
Got a little velodrome effect going on there. That's cool.
Exactly.
And then there's a right turn onto that 7 to 10% straightaway toward the paved road.
Yep. That downhill 7 to 10% where everyone just seems to hit, the sound barrier because you're all going so fast. Mm-hmm. And that straightaway hasn't changed at all. Nor has the right turn right before it. And I know I'm kind of coming off as a nervous old man here. Watch yourself on that right turn, because you can now bring so much more speed into it thanks to that banked hairpin that you may notice for the first time that second downhill right turn that is unbanked and with that gravelly, sandy Leadville surface that makes such a nice sound, it could be very easy to slide out when you hit that corner at speed. You could go down, really, really rip yourself up.
Mm-hmm. Duly noted. Back to the climb, though. I noticed you did not record anything after hitting about 10,000 feet.
Yeah, the course is really unchanged after that first Powerline pitch to the first false summit. Plus, right now in mid-June, you start running into snow at about 10,500 feet. So we turned around and rode back down, at which point the hammer swapped out to running shoes and ran back up the whole thing while I rode alongside beside her.
Incredible. She went running today. She ran the trail marathon the day after. She rides and runs.
Yes, that's right. And actually, as I was editing today, the recording you just listened to, she went out biking, I guess, a second time today, her third athletic activity of the day after taking second in a marathon. I tell you, Hottie, it's time she admits she has a problem.
And what did we do for ourselves? Well, it's Father's Day as we record this, so you were enjoying it father style, I hope, and I was just being Hottie. But so back to the climb. So in the end, what's the net difference for racers with this course change, the grading?
Well, it's fast in a whole new way for the very bottom on the descent, right? You'll get down it faster than you've ever done it before. The danger, as I mentioned, is uncontrolled speed, either your own or others here. So keep good course awareness. For the return trip, from mile 80 to 84, what it means, as far as I'm concerned, is opportunity. Like with Columbine, it used to be more or less impossible to climb if you were in the main field of racers. Now, that wide open, flat road, flat meaning no ruts, not that it has somehow been leveled, it's still 17 to 23%. If you have the legs and the lungs and the gas in the tank for it, you have a better chance of cleaning this climb. Basically, if you can climb a half a mile in sandy gravel at a 20% grade at 10,000 feet with 80 miles of hard climbing racing in your legs, Powerline should be no problem.
No problem, right. So really, so it sounds like Powerline's still not going to be a ride in the park.
Yeah, we're all still going to be walking it. Hadi, you know I've been a huge fan of Goo Roctane Gel for years, right?
Yeah, you credit it, along with learning nutrition discipline during races, for your fastest times at the Leadville 100.
Yeah, but of course, you and I have both been talking about the Morton energy drink more or less since we started the show last season. So, of course, I've been curious about whether the new Morton energy gel is, better in any meaningful way than Goo that I'm so attached to. So I've been trying it out, and I have a couple of thoughts. First, it has practically no taste. Like, there's a little bit of sweetness in there, but that's about it. So if the flavors or intense sweetness of other gels gets on your nerves or your stomach, then Morton is definitely worth checking out. Second, the texture is wildly different than other gels. It is not syrupy, but it's also not texture-free. It has sort of a little tapioca-like bubble consistency in the gel. It's not bad, but I will say that the first time I tried it, it definitely caught me off guard. Third, it has the same number of calories, 100, as other gels, and I'm not noticing a radically different effect from it.
So are you making the switch?
Personally, I don't think I am going to. I think it's an interesting alternative, but I've had incredible luck with Goo, and I plan on sticking with it. You, however, should give Morton a try, and let us know what you think.
Actually, I have given it a try, and initial impressions, well, I thought, first of all, I found the same taste profile as you, very light taste, not offensive at all, but just a very light flavor, which I thought was great. The other impression I got, even though I only did a couple gels, I felt like I could have just kept downing these things. Like, I never got distressed. They were so light in flavor, I could have just kept, pushing them down my throat without any negative effects, unlike what happens with other energy products. Now, that said, I don't know that I'd go exclusive with these things. I could see myself mix and matching. Like, hey, I'm in the mood for some Morton, do a couple of those. Maybe a half hour later, 45 minutes later, grab a Goo, go for something with more caffeine content to it. So I kind of see it cafeteria style. Not all Morton, but certainly feature it in future endurance rides. And the nice thing is, regardless of whether you're a Goo Roctane Gel devotee like Fatty here, or making a wholesale move that is to Morton, the feed has got you covered. In fact, that's their whole value proposition, really. They've got a huge variety of brands and products, all at great prices.
Yeah, that's really true, Hadi. And different things work for different people and in different ratios, right? And the feed has pretty much got something for everyone. And it's worth noting, we should say, that our podcast listeners can get a great price on a pack curated for Leadville listeners, containing a lot of the things that you've heard Hadi and me talk about that we use in the Leadville 100 and other races. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville for our Leadville pack, and be sure to use the code Leadville15 for a 15% discount. You can also use that Leadville 15 code for buying any amount of Morton, and that's Morton Gel or the Morton Energy Drink at a 15% discount. I am going to definitely continue using the energy drink in tandem with my Goo Roctane Gels and Bonk Breaker Bars at the Silver Rush and the Crusher and the Tusher, and of course at the Leadville 100.
Again, thefeed.com/Leadville, and use the Leadville 15 code at checkout.
Hottie, the last year was the first time in, I don't know, I think 3, 4, maybe 5 years, I haven't broken the 9-hour mark at Leadville. I got a 9:05. Do you know why?
Well, the obvious reason is you went too slow.
Yes, there is that. But also, I was stopped, according to Strava, about halfway up the Columbine Mine climb for a crucial 12 minutes. More than enough to miss getting that sub-9 buckle. And you know why I wasn't moving? Cramps. Both calves, both hamstrings. I was locked up, shut down, and incapacitated.
Yep, and usually that means you are not moving.
No, I wasn't.
You weren't, as Strava said. I rarely cramp on the bike. That's not to say I don't. Usually I get my cramps, oddly, at rest when I'm just laying around doing nothing.
Yeah, well, it's cramps are kind of a mysterious, big topic, no easy answers. But we went to our nutrition expert, Goo Energy Labs, Roxanne Vogel, to see if she has any cramp hacks.
Roxanne, welcome back to the Leadville podcast. I'm afraid that it's a sort of a bad news conversation today. We want to ask you about cramps.
Oh, Fatty, one of my favorite subjects. Everybody wants to know what to do to avoid the cramp.
Yeah, and I think there's sort of a two-part conversation, and we're on that, of course, what can you do to avoid them in the first place, and what can you do once you got them? I think that we really ought to focus primarily on how to avoid them by training properly. So where do we start? How do we do our best to avoid cramps in the first place?
Yeah, so I think really it comes down to an issue of neuromuscular fatigue. And that's what the most research is showing these days is it's not so much a nutrition and hydration issue, which is what a lot of people believe. And that can kind of make you more prone to cramping, but it's not necessarily going to be what causes it. And it's going to be more what you do for training to get your muscles ready to handle whatever load you're going to be putting on them that causes the cramping. So being well trained and using those muscles so that they don't get fatigued and then start kind of like overfiring, which is what's causing the cramps. So I think training is huge for preventing cramps and doing whatever it is you're going to be doing. If you're going to be riding for 8 hours and using a specific muscle group, train that muscle group to not fatigue for 8 hours or whatever you're riding.
Mm. Roxanne, is it true that many people have cramps in the same spot? Like, or just some of us have, I get a hamstring cramp or I get a glute cramp, or is that the way it kind of works for people, or are they more random than that?
Yeah, I think for most people, you tend to see that they get cramps in the muscles that they are working the hardest, right? So people who are running or biking tend to get cramps in their legs and things like that. So yeah, it's absolutely very localized to those muscles that you're using the most. And like for me personally, I get crazy cramps in my calf that are just like debilitating. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with it and it's just like, oh my God, that makes me want to just jump out of my altitude tent. But
yeah, Fatty, I'm not a prolific cramper on the bike. I get them at rest though. When I'm laying on the couch afterwards, I'll seize up once in a while. The only time I get them on the bike is maybe if I fall or something suddenly happens to me. Actually, my abdominals will cramp up once in a while, and it's kind of crazy to try to deal with that in the middle of a ride. You're all kind of seized over with abdominal cramps, but that's my little cramp issue, that's for sure.
That is weird. I will also get a weird cramp, but it always comes in tandem with a more traditional cramp, either in my hamstrings or in my calves, like Roxanne experiences. I will get cramps in my cheek muscles.
Really?
wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Not so much cramps as a weird spasm, but yeah, so it definitely when things start firing wrong, they start firing wrong in some weird places. We can guarantee that.
Well, Fatty, maybe before we get off this, we should ask Roxanne, can we prevent these cramps? If we know we cramp like in our calves or in our quads, does working those muscles, say in a gym environment, does that help us at all to stave these cramps off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to come down to whatever the exercise is that's causing them. If you're getting them, if they're exercise-induced muscle cramps, whatever that exercise is that's causing them in the first place, that's what you need to focus on. So doing more of that so that you kind of decrease that threshold where it's going to initiate a cramp. And it also might come down to a little bit of stretching and things like that, where you can kind of tease out some of those muscle fibers and the muscle spindles that become overactive. So unfortunately, I don't think it's one of those things where it's like you can do a bunch of calf raises in the gym to prevent calf cramps. I think it's really just using those muscles in that specific way and getting them accustomed to that training load.
So what is your take on things that are sold to help you deal with cramps once they've started? Things like pickle juice or hot shots or electrolyte capsules. There are a number of things that, and I've tried all of them, sometimes all of them together, but can they make a difference? Can they help? Or is it just something that it might be making you think it's better, and so it is perhaps a little bit better?
Well, I've thought a lot about this, and some people, anecdotally will say, well, I was cramping really bad, and then I stopped and I took a shot of this or that, or I stopped and I took some electrolyte capsules, and then my cramping got better. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I'm so glad that your cramping got better. But the one thing that is kind of common to all of their stories is they stopped.
Right.
They stopped moving, right? So that could totally be what alleviated the cramp as well. So I'm not sold on any sort of nutritional intervention per se. I don't think that any of it's going to be harmful. I think if you want to take a couple electrolyte capsules and see if, that helps, or if anything, it might help with your hydration level, which is good too. Then by all means, give it a shot. But it could just be, stopping whatever activity is causing the cramping. And the other thing I would say is if you are getting a cramp and you're out there, you might just stop and give it a little stretch, give the muscle a little time to rest and stretch it a little bit, because that will typically make them go away.
Roxanne, two things that get circled a lot of times when it comes down to cramping are magnesium and calcium. Explain how they work or what they do regarding our muscles firing, and whether or not you think they're a good idea to be adding to our diet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, magnesium and calcium are very closely related to how your nerves and your muscle fibers contract and fire, and so they do play a role in obviously like muscle function and things like that can be closely related with cramping. But I would say it's hard to say whether supplementing with these things will necessarily decrease your potential to cramp. But again, I think a lot of people are low in magnesium. And so that is one of the supplements that I often recommend to people, just in general, because it can help with overall performance. Magnesium's involved with like just a huge number of enzyme activities that go on in the body that are super important for athletic performance. So I think taking magnesium is not really a bad idea. Maybe like 200 milligrams a day. And then also people who take magnesium seem to get like a calming effect from it. So taking it at night before bed can, one, maybe help with some, restlessness before bedtime. And then it can also help with, nerve conduction and things like that. So it could also help with some cramping issues. And then calcium as well. Yes, there's calcium release, which allows your muscles to contract. So it is very important for muscle function. And a lot of people don't get enough calcium in their diet. So that's another one where it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to hurt you, maybe 1,000 milligrams a day.
And we lose, is it both or just magnesium and sweat? I know one of them gets sweated out pretty easily.
Typically, you tend to lose a little more magnesium, but it's not like a huge amount. So yeah, the thing you really lose the most is sodium, obviously, and everything else is kind of pales in comparison to that in sweat.
All right, thanks for all that, Roxanne. Again, to capsulize all of this if we can, remember, cramps are generally a neuromuscular fatigue issue more than anything else. In other words, you're just using your muscles too much, and they're mad at you. Yeah, a lot of things can work, like maybe taking an electrolyte tablet or a hot shot or pickle juice. But generally what you've done, according to Roxanne, is you've stopped. You've stopped your activity, and that's why your muscle cramp has gone away. Maybe not so much the whatever you just took. Magnesium and calcium, not a bad idea because they are an integral part of how your muscles fire, either contracting or releasing. So maybe on the magnesium and calcium. Next time we get with Roxanne, what to do when things go wrong during your race. Fatty, I was a hero the other day, if you don't mind me saying. I saved one man's mountain bike ride, and our friends at Banjo Brothers had a little something to do with it. We had barely started our ride when my partner snapped his chain.
Oh, well, I know Banjo Brothers make some good stuff, but as far as I know, they don't make chains.
You're right. They do not. But they do make plenty of bags where you can stash stuff so you can fix a chain. In this case, it was my cycling phone wallet.
Oh, so you pulled your phone out of your phone wallet and called an Uber, right?
Nice try. No. You see,
that's what I do.
Well, I don't even put a phone in my Banjo Brothers cycling phone wallet. Instead, I put everything I might need to make a repair no matter what bike I am on, whether it be my road bike, gravel bike, mountain bike, all those common things you carry bike to bike, right? So in that wallet, I have zip ties, tape, tubeless plugs, patches, and in this case, the thing that saved the day, a quick link. My buddy had forgotten his, but I had one stashed in my Banjo Brothers cycling phone wallet. I gave it to him, that link, and he later bought me a coffee.
Oh, good investment. I love those phone wallets. The compartments sort of seal out the moisture, and they're clear plastic so you can see what's inside, including your phone screen if you happen to be using it for a phone. Like most of us do. They're just simple, but also incredibly useful. And you can get 15% off your phone wallet and other Banjo Brothers gear by going to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites, which makes this pack, I don't even know how much the phone wallet is. It's cheap. It's like $10. And with our discount, it's practically nothing. They're practically sending you a check to take one. Banjo Brothers is tough, it's practical, it's affordable. They're based in Minneapolis. They've been in business since 2003, and they are just really good guys. So once again, get 15% off your order, whether it's a phone wallet and other stuff, or anything you like there. Just go to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites.
Fatty, have you heard the term, a clean bike is a fast bike?
Oh, I've heard of it, but I'm not super good at following it.
Yeah, so I've heard. You in particular, then, are going to want to listen to our mountain bike maintenance segment here. We're getting down and dirty with Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks, who says you'd be surprised where that dirt can hide. All right, Leadvillers, we're back with Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks. Today we're going to talk about dirt. Because mountain bikes get dirty, and the dirt creeps in all sorts of places. Ryan,
yes.
In the times you've torn down mountain bikes, tell me some of the spots you have found where dirt is just embedded.
I have seen piles of dirt fall out of bottom bracket tubes, seat tubes, handlebars, you name it. Anywhere there is a place to get something caught in or crud caught in, it gets there with full force.
Mm-hmm. And what are the areas? We've gone out on our training ride.
Sure.
Bikes covered with dirt.
Yes.
What do we do? How can we protect all those delicate parts?
Good rule of thumb, I learned this living in Oregon and commuting almost every day while I was living in Portland and dealing with wet weather every day. My bike didn't necessarily get full of mud, but it got wet. So what I learned, end of the day, you get home from a ride, you wipe your bike down. Certainly a little easier if it's just wet than dirty and nasty, but good rule of thumb is wiping things down, making things as clean as possible. Some of that is harder to do than others. A lot of the dirt that gets on the bike that gets wiped off can also get pushed into places like headsets, like cranks and bottom brackets, like into the free hub body of the rear hub. All of these bearing systems obviously are what keeps your bike rolling. So it's a good idea to do some cleaning, but also sometimes removing the parts as well to get a deeper clean and, more importantly, not push that dirt further into a system to contaminate it.
which kind of gets me to my next question. If we have access to an air compressor,
Yes.
is that friend or foe, that air compressor?
To me, it's dependent upon what you're doing. I would say if you're wanting to use a air compressor to blow off your bike to get it dry, I'm not a big fan of it because a lot of that compressed air that is drying your bike is also pushing water and dirt and everything else that you have nicely tried to get off the bike into bearing systems like hubs, headsets, bottom brackets. I would say if you are drying parts independently off of your frame, like your chain and your cassette, I'm all for compressed air, absolutely.
And getting dirt off of, a lot of the focus usually is on chain and
Correct.
cassette.
Chain and cassette.
Come back. It's just get that thing wiped down as fast as you can and re-lube.
Correct. It's a good idea, back from a ride at the least to wipe the chain down. A wonderful, easy thing to use, and there are quite a few manufacturers on the market. I'm not going to name particular ones, but a few manufacturers make chain cleaning contraptions that hook onto the rear derailleur and chain. They drag the chain through to clean it. They do a wonderful job if you don't have easy access to tools to take your chain off or to clean it in a solvent tank. And then I would say removing the gears off of the rear wheel to clean them rather than cleaning them on the rear wheel. Certainly easier to clean them on the rear wheel, but you'll be paying your mechanic a bit more money in the near future to replace free hub bearings and possibly more than that.
All right, if you need your bike further serviced, further checked over, inspected for dirt in every nook and cranny, Ryan will reluctantly, I suppose, do that. He is Ryan Morse.
Happy and reluctant, but yes.
He's in the LA area, folks. Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks. Thanks for being on the show again.
Sure.
In Season 2, Episode 14, we got some tips from Trainer Road's Jonathan Lee on seated versus standing climbing. If you haven't heard that episode, be sure to check it out. Fatty, it's pretty obvious that when you stand, you're going to really be rocking those bars, and you want whatever you're holding on to transfer that energy properly. But I remember a tip I got at a skills lesson on seated climbs, especially short, steep pitches. And that was to pull the bars toward your torso in sync as you hit the pedals on the downside. So pull, push, pull, push. That was a little tip that I got. It was great.
Yeah, and that is another really good reason to have a fantastic set of handlebars, like the ones both Hadi and I use, the Envy M5s. Out of the box, they're 780 millimeters wide, which is just perfect for a standing climber like me who likes to really rock and roll up Columbine.
And if you spend more time in the saddle like me, then the 9-degree sweep on the M5 handlebar is just right to get those hands positioned for the occasional row motion to get up that steep pitch.
Yep, rock and row, or rock or row. You can learn more about all of Envy's wheels and components, many of which seem like they are made with the Leadville 100 in mind, but can handle, honestly, anything you throw at them for practically any terrain. At Envy, that is ENVE.com.
Yeah, and if you plan on trying to climb Columbine like Fatty did in this show, you're going to need to rock and row just a little bit to get up that lower section. All right.
True.
Let's wrap up Season 2, Episode 15 of the Leadville podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like our show, give us that 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, share it with your other cycling friends. And support those sponsors you've heard. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible.
Yep. Meanwhile, if you have other ideas or questions for us, head over to the Leadville 100 to the Leadville 100podcast.com comment section and get in touch.
Also, follow Fatty on Twitter. See, I messed it up too. Follow Fatty on Twitter. That's a tough one. You say it 10 times fast. Never mind. You climbed Columbine today, or you climbed Powerline today. You'll be fine. Follow Fatty on Twitter is what he's trying to say, at Fat Cyclist. You can find me on Twitter at Michael Houghton. I'm also on that thing called Instagram, Michael Houghton. Find us both on Facebook, where we're both active in the Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants Group. Got a question? Reach out to us, and there's a good chance we'll answer you right here.
Yep. Good luck on your training. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in just a couple of months at the starting line.